Hi everyone, this is my first time ever doing anything like this. I never thought I'd be sitting here and sharing the video that I'm going to be sharing today. It's to speak about a journey that I went through for 10 years, and I just felt like I'm at the point where I'm so ready to speak about it, to make a difference in someone else's life, just to share the journey that I went through and to give some hope to someone, to say that if I could do it, then so can you. And I really hope that this inspires and helps someone today. So if after the video you do have any questions, I am so open to speak about it. I'm so open to answer any questions, whether you are simply just curious or whether you need help or you are going through something very similar. You are more than welcome to leave a comment or send me an Instagram message. Like I said, I'm so willing to answer any questions, from the very personal ones to funny ones. I really don't mind. I just want to speak about something today that is so relevant in today's society, and I'm one of the people that went through these things, and it's about my journey with food. And it started in 2011, and it finished last year, so it was about a 10-year journey, and it was one of the toughest journeys I've ever had to go on in my entire life. And I am at the point now where I know for a fact that I'm healed, and I just wanted to share this story. So if you are trusting for anything this year, if you have given up hope on a situation, if you are going through something similar or the same things as what I have and what I'm going to share now, then I just want to tell you that it's not the end of the road for you. Whatever I went through, I do not wish it upon my worst enemy. Not that I have any enemies, but yeah, I don't wish it upon anyone. It's the toughest thing I've ever gone through. But I am set free from that today, and that's why I feel like I need to share my testimony of what God has done in my life, and He'll do it in yours as well. So my journey started in 2011. My twin sister and I used to be swimmers, and I was grade 8 at this stage. And halfway through grade 8, I just decided that swimming was not for me anymore. My twin sister became a lot better than I was. So I just thought that if I can't beat her, then I probably won't ever be the best, which is not necessarily the best attitude to have, but I had peace in my heart about stopping, and I spoke to my parents. They were very supportive of the decision, and I finally stopped. So before that, I really found my identity in swimming. My twin sister and I, when we moved schools, we were known as the swimming twins. So when I stopped, I didn't really know who I was, and I wasn't known as the swimming twin anymore. And at that time, you are so bombarded with social media, comparing yourself to everyone and how everyone looks and what everyone is doing. I fell into that trap. I started exercising with my mom, so I joined my mom to the gym in the mornings, and then after school I joined team sports, water polo, I did hockey, did cross country, and sometimes I swam a bit again as well at the gym by myself. And I come out of a family that is very healthy. Diet was never a discussion in our home. Weight was never discussed. It was never an interest in any of the conversations, and my mom was never interested in a scale in the home, so we were never the kind of family to weigh ourselves or to want to lose weight or anything. So overall, we really just lived a very balanced life. And with this, that I stopped swimming, I obviously didn't train as hard anymore and as frequently, but I kept eating the same amount and at the same frequency. So obviously I gained a bit of weight. Initially I didn't really realize that, and slowly towards the end of 2011 I started noticing that my jeans were fitting a bit tighter, but nothing too bad. And the one morning at gym in October, I remember after I exercised, before getting dressed for school, I just stepped onto the scale to see what I weighed. And I remember getting on and looking down at the number, and I won't say how much it was, just for people that might be triggered by anything. I got on and I immediately decided that that number was too much and I weighed too much, so I needed to lose weight. Bearing in mind that I had no reference of what I should weigh, so I just made up my mind that that was too much and that I needed to lose weight. So my journey started, and I decided to make my dinner times, my dinner meals, a bit smaller. It was very common for me to have a food baby after dinner because I just loved food so much. So I decided, okay, I need to avoid that if I want to lose a bit of weight, so I'll just eat until I'm satisfied. So that started, and it went well for a couple of months. And then I started realizing that if I slipped up and I had too much to eat, that I would really beat myself up and I would feel really badly after that, and I would promise myself that I wouldn't do it again. And I became very conscious of what I was eating all the time. I started slowly realizing that I was losing a bit of weight. I was feeling a bit more comfortable in my clothes. And at the end of 2011, my family and I went overseas for 3 weeks. And in that time, I didn't consume any of the chocolate or the sweet treats that we were given throughout the holiday. So as we returned home 2012 in January, I had this big bag full of sweets that I chucked out onto my bed when we arrived home, and I realized, wow, like, you were so disciplined. You didn't eat any of these things. Like, if you didn't need it then, you don't need it now. So I became very conscious of the fact that I was very disciplined, or I could be very disciplined. I started making every meal smaller, and I wanted to lose more weight. So it got to the point where every morning after I exercised, I started weighing myself, and all my meal sizes became smaller. And I started feeling a very big difference in my weight loss. And at that point I was losing weight quite quickly. So this was in 2012, in the beginning of grade 9. And my mom always used to pack our lunch for school, and then I asked if I could, thinking that I can control the amount I eat now and what kind of food I was putting in for myself. So it became less, obviously, and my mom started noticing. She started noticing my behavior around food, the fact that I was not really eating a lot. And then she stood with me one morning while I was packing my lunch, and she said, "Watch out. I can see what you are busy doing, and if you're not going to stop, if you're not going to be careful, then you're going to end up with an eating disorder." And I remember being so mad at my mom this morning, but in the back of my mind, I kind of realized that I wasn't in a healthy spot mentally. I was very obsessed with what I was eating. And I really started restricting my food to the point where I almost had nothing to eat for breakfast after I exercised in the mornings. I started lying to my mom about the food I was eating. I used to throw away food. Sometimes I forgot to throw away some food before I came home, and then I would have nibbled on a few things, and then my mom would obviously find out, and that didn't go down very well. And so it put a lot of strain on my relationship with my mom, because she was obviously checking up on me to make sure that I eat enough, that I look after myself, and I didn't like that because it felt like, you know, someone was watching me all the time, and I just wanted everyone to leave me alone because I wanted to lose weight. And people started noticing that I was losing a bit of weight, and people obviously told me that, you know, you look good, which is a nice thing to say, but for someone that is obsessed with wanting to lose weight, it's probably not the best thing to say. I got to the point where I was very, very skinny, and my teachers started noticing, and my parents were called in by the principal to ask whether I was receiving help and what was going on. They wanted to know. So we got a dietitian and a psychologist, and my journey started with trying to recover or get to, a weight that was actually okay. Because the day I went to go see the dietitian, she diagnosed me with anorexia. So at that point, in the beginning of probably around April of 2012 in grade 9, I was extremely skinny. But obviously to myself, I did not look like I was near enough skinny at all. So I remember standing in front of my mirror in my closet, and I told myself that you will get anorexia and you are so fat, like you are not good enough. The clothes look horrible on you, you are disgusting. And I remember touching my body and the things I didn't like about myself, and it became more frequent that I stood in front of the mirror and I told myself those things, and it was absolutely horrifying. And so my journey started with a dietitian. I used to go see her once to twice a week, and then I had a session with a psychologist once a week as well. And I'm not really one for psychologists. I did not enjoy it. I probably went through, I think, 6 psychologists while I was at school. It was horrible because I had to retell the story every time, and for me there was no story to it because nothing emotional happened that drove me to developing an eating disorder, and they were looking for all these emotional things, and I just simply wanted to have a body that social media was portraying to me, and I did not know that it was actually unattainable, and that you would never really be satisfied with yourself unless you learn to love yourself and accept yourself. So my weight obviously rapidly started decreasing, and it was very tough on my family to see me like that. And I didn't only lose weight, like I lost my hope, I lost my joy. I always wanted to stay by myself, wanted to isolate myself. And I got to a place where I was so depressed because I was not feeding myself and I had no energy, that I would sit in my closet and just cry. And then I would think to myself, well, what's it really to live for? Like, what is life about? And there were so many times where I thought about cutting myself, or just ending my life. And obviously I had to tell these things to the psychologist. So eventually I was sent to a psychiatrist, put on antidepressants. So in grade 9 I was on antidepressants for about 3 months, and then we left on camp in grade 9 for a month where we went into the mountains. So obviously my family didn't see me for an entire month. And when I came back in that December, and I walked to school and my parents saw me for the first time, the look of devastation on their faces were really scary. I realized then how thin I had gotten, because during that month I didn't really realize that I lost even more weight, and I didn't see myself in a mirror, and to me I still felt like fat in my eyes. So I heard that my parents wanted to take me to get hospitalized, but we had to catch a flight, so I was very grateful for that. I was so excited to eat when I got home, but as soon as I sat down to eat food, that fear came in, and I was like, you cannot eat, you're gonna get fat. And immediately there was tension in the home, the atmosphere wasn't very good. And I could see that my parents really did not like seeing me like that. So anyways, we went on holiday in December, and it was horrible. I didn't want to be with my family. I was quiet. Meal times, I didn't want to eat. So if I had a plate in front of me, there were many times where I just wanted to cry. There were times that I cried, or I was just extremely moody, and I would take a few bites and then leave the rest on my plate. And thinking back now, a lot of these times are very vague to me because of the mental state I was in, because I had such low energy. I can't really remember a lot of it. It feels like I was in a complete daze, and I don't know if it was a bit of influence from the antidepressants what I was on, but yeah, it really just was not good. So at the start of 2012, I was at around my lowest weight, and if I had to guess now of what I weigh, it's probably about 20 kilograms less. So yeah, I was still seeing a psychologist in the beginning of grade 10. At that point, I was still very depressed. I was off antidepressants at that time, and I remember one evening I was standing in my room, and my mum came into my room crying, and she just said that I really, like, she doesn't know what to do, but I really need to try to get better, because she had a dream, and she said that I passed away in the dream because my organs couldn't function anymore because I wasn't feeding it enough. And I was broken that evening to see my mom like that, and to realize what I was putting my parents through, and my sisters as well. But yeah, that didn't change anything in my mind. It was still the battle I was facing. I had this one voice begging me to, get better and to make the decision to really try. And then I had this other voice of anorexia in my mind, always accusing me of being too fat and not wanting me to eat. And this voice was obviously a lot stronger. And yeah, there were so many times after I went to the dietitian where I'd get in the car and just shouted at my mom, saying like, I hate myself, I don't ever want to come here again, people must just leave me alone. There were so many times in the house where I used to just like shout at how much I hated myself. And I can't imagine what it must be like to see your child in such a state where they just refuse to eat, and where they really hate themselves so much, and they in such a bad mental space. I used to remember lying in the evenings in my bed while sleeping. I used to wake up and I used to have these cramps in my calves, and it would be so sore, and it was obviously because I wasn't eating anything. And I don't really want to say how much I used to eat or what I used to eat, just because it might give some people ideas, or I just don't want this video to be triggering to anyone that might be going through the same things or are thinking about these things. My heart really goes out to anyone that's busy facing these problems right now, and I wish I could just give you the biggest hug and tell you that everything is going to be okay, because it will. Because I know at that time I did not believe it myself, but I'm sitting here today and I'm healed from all those things. So if you are going through that right now, I just want to say that things take time, but things do get better at the end. So anyways, in grade 10, my twin sister moved away to a different city. So we finished grade 11 and matric separately, and that was obviously a very big emotional thing on me, because I let go of my sister that I was used to spending 24/7 with, and we did everything together. So that was a very big emotional knock on me, and I was so used to coping with anorexia. I used it as a coping mechanism, and feeling like I was in control of things when I could control my eating. So it obviously also didn't help my eating disorder very much. In the beginning of grade 11, I decided that I needed to get better. I started gaining a bit of weight, but I wasn't really dealing with it psychologically. I was very frustrated because I obviously felt my clothes could feel a bit tighter, weighed myself and realized that I was picking up a bit of weight. The dietitian did help me a lot, but I also had in my mind that if I just pick up a bit of weight, then people are going to get off my back, and then I can just do whatever I want. So there was some motivation behind picking up weight, but not the good kind of motivation. Grade 11, I started picking up a bit of weight. Immediately, I really started feeling like myself again, just because I was eating and I was actually fueling my body a little. and I had the energy to actually engage with people and laugh. By this time, my period had been gone for 3 years, so during my whole grade 11 year, I still did not have any period. And I got to the point in the middle of the year where I gained a fair amount and I looked normal, and finally I did not have to go to the dietitian anymore, and the psychologist was off my back as well. But mentally I was not in the best space. I obviously allowed myself to eat the foods that I never allowed myself to eat. So I remember the one day I was eating and I ate a lot of one specific food, and I felt so bad and so guilty, and I hated myself. And I always told my mom, like, she didn't have to worry because I'll never get anything like bulimia, because like bringing up your food just completely scared me. And when people said they felt sick, I ran away because I hated, people getting sick so much. But then that thought ran through my mind, and I was like, well, if I can do that, then I can eat what I want and not gain weight. So I was very afraid. I waited for my parents to go out for the day, and as soon as they left, I went to the bathroom, and I was very terrified. Anyways, eventually got it right, and I was so scared afterwards, but everything came out and I had that sense of relief. Now I really liked that feeling of emptiness again, because I was so used to it with having anorexia. Once again, I think probably a month or so after that first incident, I ate too much again, and once again I tried it. I brought up my food and I felt better. And obviously if you see something is working and it's helping you not gain weight, you're going to want to carry on with it, because now I could eat what I deprived myself of for such a long time, and I wasn't going to gain weight. And in grade 11, your exams are obviously very important. Studying you need to do, and it became such a focus point for me of what I was eating, and when I could bring up my food, that in the evenings when I had to study for my exams, I used to think about food, and then I used to go find the food that I was craving, eat a whole lot of it, and then purge afterwards, and then it's too late for me to sit and to study, and I felt too tired and too weak after that, so I would just go to bed. So obviously my grades dropped a lot. I really struggled to focus in class. It was all I could think about. It really consumed my mind at this stage, and I felt so guilty and so ashamed of what I was doing. I think one of the big things for me was the fact that I was eating food and bringing it up, and there are so many people in South Africa that are starving every day, and I was wasting food. Not even to mention like the health factors that are involved and the health implications that come with having bulimia. And at the end of the year, it was quite frequent where I was doing it at least every single week, probably at least once to twice every single week. Along with that, I was obsessed with exercising. I exercised in the morning before school and after school, and I was really not in a good mental space at all. So anyways, I went into grade 12, so my matric year, and at that time I still did not have my period. Obviously I went to go see a gynecologist about it, and yeah, it was because of my eating, obviously. And I was made aware of the fact that I could end up not being able to have children one day. And my bone density, I went for bone density test, that was also very low. And none of this actually helped me recover, because I was so focused on losing weight and looking a certain way that none of what anyone told me really made a difference or mattered to me, which is so sad. And so throughout the whole matric year, my matric year 2015, I had bulimia, and it got to the point where I was doing it almost every single day. thinking back to it now, it's really something very serious, and I don't think people really know the seriousness of things like this, where naturally someone could look healthy but they could be dealing with things like this. And at that time I looked okay. I didn't look extremely thin, so there was no reason for someone to think that I had any problems going on. And it really takes a toll on you when you have to pretend like everything is fine and you're living your best life, when actually inside you basically dying. And you can't speak to anyone. You feel extremely alone. You've got stress because you know you need to study. That you need to do well in order to get into university, and you just simply cannot help yourself. You can't find the means to make yourself any better. And as much as I wanted to get better, because I hated what I was doing to myself, and I hated that process and living through those things every single day, it was really something so bad. And then at the end of 2015 I moved to Pretoria to stay with my other two sisters. So I thought, okay, new environment, gonna be living with my sisters, my bulimia is just gonna go away because I'm not gonna be able to do it there anyway. And I was so wrong. You really do think of new ways of doing things, and where there is a will, there is a way. And I was so obsessed with losing weight and looking a certain way that I found many other ways of getting it done without any of my sisters noticing. So I started university, and along with all the stress, bulimia was my coping mechanism. So the more I stressed, the more I binged and purged, and the less I studied, and the worse I felt, the more guilt and shame I felt. When you go through that time when you binge, so just to give you some perspective, my entire session, if you can call it that, from binging to purging and getting it all done, would last about 3 hours. And I won't disclose how much I ate, but if you do have any questions regarding that, if you are curious, you're more than welcome to ask me. I am willing to share. So yeah, it took a lot of time, and obviously Vossi was so much more work than school, so my studying required a lot more time, but I was dedicating most of my time to this eating disorder. So I went through the whole of 2016 being obsessed with exercise. I struggled to study, and so I went into 2017 with all of these things going on. I never felt like I could really disclose to anyone what was going on in my life because of the fear of what people will say. And it was a coping mechanism, and as much as I hated it, I loved it at the same time, because it's an addiction. It's an addiction like any other addiction. I went to go see a psychologist again in 2017. For the first time, I felt like I could actually relate with the psychologist, because she went through eating disorders herself when she was younger. So finally I was like, okay, I can actually speak to you because you understand what I'm going through. And everyone else, I felt like I could not relate to, because they wouldn't understand what I was going through, because they didn't experience all of these things themselves. So 2017, I was basically doing it every day and several times a day as well. And it was very difficult because I was living with my sisters. So I used to stay up until about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning when my sisters were asleep, doing all my things, and then going to bed at about 4 o'clock, waking up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock to go exercise, and then head out to university. Come home, sometimes on the way home, go buy food, binge again, purge again, study a bit, and then have dinner, wait for my sisters to go to bed, binge, purge. So it was a very, very vicious cycle, and obviously it's got a very big effect on your social life, on your emotional health, psychologically. So I ended up going on to antidepressants again in 2018. And in 2018, I hit rock bottom where I felt so alone. I was so tired. I put my body through a lot. There were times after I purged where you feel so guilty and ashamed that I would sit on the bathroom floor and cry. And I had so many days where I had so many suicidal thoughts. I was so used to lying to everyone about what I was eating. My sisters used to ask me, why are my eyes so red? Why do I have these funny rashes on my eyes? Where did all the food disappear to? So I really had to lie a lot, and that also was another contributing factor that made me feel so absolutely horrible. I read up many nights about the complications that come with having these eating disorders for such a long time. And I used to cry myself to sleep in the evenings, thinking that, these things would make me change my mind. And I really so badly wanted to help myself get better, but I just saw no way out. And at this time in 2018, I was so broken and alone that I had no hope left anymore. So I opened up to about 2 of my very close friends in church. That really helped a lot. I could just speak to someone, and although I still felt like no one could relate with me because they didn't go through these things themselves, it was still good for me to be able to have those people to speak to and just to share what's on my heart, because I didn't feel as alone anymore, and I just knew that someone was there that I could speak to if I really needed to. So 2018 went on, and I was doing it up to between 6 and 10 times a day, and there were so many weeks that went by that it went well, and I actually managed to get to a point where I wasn't doing it. And it lasted about, the longest I went without binging and purging was 3 weeks. And then as soon as I get to the point where I mess up again, then it's like it's 10 times worse. And then I lose all hope again because I'm back at square one and I have to start all over again. And it was just the same thing over and over again. So it was disappointment after disappointment. And I used to cry out to God so many nights, asking the Lord, like, why do so many people get healed instantly, and why am I struggling with this thing for such a long time? I mean, from 2011 I had these issues, and from then on I have not been living in freedom. I did not know what hope was anymore. So in 2018 I left church. I didn't want to be in church. I used to lie about like going to church, and then actually instead of going to church I would have a whole binge and purge session. And I remember in 2018 I tried laxatives and things as well, and that went horribly wrong. Had the worst stomach pain I've ever experienced in my entire life. And there were so many times throughout this journey where I really thought that I would die, that I was not going to make it through the night. And that's why I say, I don't think people realize how serious eating disorders are, and why so many people actually die from these things. So anyways, in 2019 I gave up, and I tried everything to get better. Psychologists and dietitians couldn't help me, so I was like, well, let me go back to church again. But yeah, I was still going through this battle every single day. And I was finally, in 2019, it was my final year of university. Yeah, I was still in a place where I was just absolutely hopeless, and I was starting to accept it, that I was starting to accept the fact that it would be part of my life for the rest of my life. I was starting to learn to live with it. As hard and as terrible as it was, I just did not see any way out whatsoever. And at the end of 2019, a bunch of our friends came to visit us in Cape Town, and one of them was Craig, which is now my husband. And anyways, I really started liking him at that time, and we were friends from 2016. And obviously I did not want to be in a relationship and have an eating disorder, and especially not one where I couldn't keep food in. And we eventually started dating in May of 2020. And then from the beginning I was very open and transparent with him about what I was going through, and he really helped a lot. He was very supportive. He prayed with me and he prayed for me, and he was really what I needed at that time, because it was someone that was constantly there for me, and someone that I could really lean on and speak to. I thought that entering into a relationship would automatically make it a lot better, because I didn't want to be stuck with this thing in a relationship, and especially not head into a marriage with something like this. But I was wrong again. I was at the point where I didn't make up my mind that I believed that I could get better. As much as we prayed and as much as he prayed for me, I was very open about the fact that I didn't know what hope was. So I was praying prayers, and they all felt so insignificant and empty to me, and so faithless. So we went into 2021, and the theme of our church for that year was restoration. And at that time, I was obviously not really believing at all, and like I said, my prayers felt very empty. And then I said, okay, well, God, if I'm believing for one thing to be restored, it's for my hope to be restored, so that I can just believe that I can get healed from all of these things. And I started praying prayers, and nothing happened. It was still, the January of 2021 was horrible. I was still doing it every single day. And I remember on the 31st of January, we went to church, and I was at Craig's house afterwards. And I already planned in my mind what I was going to binge on when I got home that evening, and that I would purge afterwards, and then start my week off with all that guilt and shame like every other week as I did before. And on my way home, my sister let me know that we can't get into the house, the electricity's off, I need to go sleep at my other sister's house. And obviously I can't binge or purge there, and I hit a panic, and I was anxious because I had all these cravings within me now, and if I put my mind on something that I was going to eat and that I was going to purge, like there was hardly anything that could stop me. It was like there was nothing else that I could focus on besides that. So anyways, I went to bed that evening, not having binged or purged, and I was like, okay, well, tomorrow's a new day. And I got an email from one of the Bible translations, and it usually gives a blog post of a specific scripture with the scripture attached. And I decided, let's quickly read it before I sleep. And the scripture of the day was Galatians 5 verse 1, that says that it boils down to, do not return to what kept you in bondage, what kept you in slavery. You have been set free. And I always prayed that I would have this moment where everything in my life would just change, and I would know for a fact that I'm healed from this eating disorder. And in that moment, I realized that from the first prayer that I prayed to get healed, God healed me. And I just knew in my heart that I needed to make up my mind that evening that I was really going to give my all to recovering, and that I had to make up my mind that I could actually get healed and could actually get better from this. And I knew then that if I woke up the next morning and I chose to do it, that everything boiled down to me and making a choice. So I knew that if I were to do all of that again, that I was choosing not to live in freedom. Because in that moment, I knew for a fact that I was set free. And I didn't really have hope, nothing major happened, but I knew in that moment that something was different and that I made a decision that evening. So I went to bed that night and I prayed and I asked God to really help me, that I would really do this for His glory, and that when I am at the point where I feel that I'm truly recovered from all these eating disorders, then I really want to share my story and give God all the glory for that. And I woke up the next morning and all those cravings were back. I wanted to eat anything and everything in my sight, and I drove home that morning absolutely crying, because I knew that I had to choose not to act on how I was feeling, to act on my temptations. And I got home and I had to fight these things in my mind and these cravings that my body was craving for. And I chose not to do it the entire day. I found other things to keep myself busy. I had scriptures that I was saying out to myself the whole time, because I had 24/7 I had these voices in my head telling me what I needed to do and that I needed to eat, and I was craving all these things. And as one day went past, I realized that, okay, if I could do it one day, I can do it the next day as well. So day 2 went past, day 3 went past, and this consisted of many tears. And I never told anyone that I was going through this, and that I made up my mind that I really wanted to get better. And eventually 1 week went past, so I used to make a note for myself of, I made it through a whole week of, not doing it. And eventually I got to the point where 1 month went by, and it was the longest I've ever gone without binging and purging. And I told Craig, and I started sharing this whole journey with him of that past month, and he really started encouraging me. We still continued to pray together, and he continued to pray for me. And I started counting more and more weeks that went by without me doing it. And then eventually 2 months went by, and I said that if I get to 6 months, then I really want to share it with my family, and especially my mom. And I had the opportunity when 6 months went by, I had the opportunity to go visit my parents. And I shared the whole journey of all those years with my mom. And it was obviously a very emotional time for us, and it was so freeing for me. And I had times when I shared my story with a couple of people where I really felt the Spirit lead me to share my story. But I said that I went through all of this, and I know that in today's society, I know already about so many girls that are going through exactly what I went through for 10 years. And the day this video is released is exactly on day 365 of me being completely recovered. And this is just such a big testimony of what God has done for me. And I just want to tell you that I do not wish this upon anyone. If you are going through this, then my heart goes out to you. You are so much more than the clothes you wear. You are so much more than the clothes size you wear. You are so much more than the number on that scale. You are so much more than the things you say to yourself in the mirror. And I just want to tell you that there is a way out, that there is hope for you. And I really hope that my story, my testimony will be an inspiration to you not to give up, and to really try and to really recover. I don't know what anyone else is facing, whether it is another addiction that you are going through, I just want to tell you that you do not give up, that things will get better. And this year, the past year, has been extremely difficult for me. I am not going to lie, it has not been easy, but it has been so extremely worth it. In 365 days, I have not purged ever again. I may have binged, and I'm slowly starting still to learn my body and to stop when I need to and when I feel satisfied, and not to go over that limit. And I'm really still learning to love myself and love every single part of me. But I have come this far and I have made it through, and I believe that I am completely healed, as much as the devil tries to tell me lies about myself. And I want that for you as well. So I really want to encourage you to reach out to someone and not to fight this battle on your own, because you are not going to find healing this way. You need to tell someone that will be there for you, that will help you, that can pray for you and pray with you. And you are not your eating disorder. You are so much more than that. I really do hope that my testimony is a hope to you, that it is an example of what God can do for you. And yeah, I just want to say that not only was my hope restored last year and throughout this year, God really restored all my relationships. He restored my joy. I mean, I was blessed enough to get married at the end of last year in September to the most loving, most wonderful and most supportive and caring husband. So yeah, not only did God heal me of my eating disorders, but He restored so much in my life. And for the first time this year, I actually started with excitement and with great expectation, knowing that I am going to see so many breakthroughs this year. And I am actually so excited for what this year holds for me. And I know that it can only be better than the previous years. And for the first time in 10 years, I can actually say that I'm hopeful for the future, and that I'm excited for the future, and that I didn't start this year in fear, but with such great excitement and expectation. So I really do hope the same for you. And like I said, please do reach out to me if you feel like you need someone to speak to, or if you just want to tell me your own story, share with me your stories, or ask for advice. I am here if anyone needs to share anything or ask questions. So yeah, God really is good, and He's got the best plans in store for you. And you just really need to believe in yourself, and believe in the fact that you can be healed, and that you are healed, and that you just need to make up your mind to recover and to get the necessary things and people in place to help you along your journey. Alright, but yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I really hope it made an impact in your life, because then yeah, I really achieved what I wanted to through this video. Alright, thank you, bye.